So now let us start. Answer in brief. Question number 1. Define capital. Define capital structure. Define capital structure and state its components and state its components. Please write the answer. First, you have to write definition pertaining to that answer. RH vessel. The long term he gave. The long term source of fund. Sources of funds. The long term sources of funds employed in a business enterprise is known as capital. Second definition of John H. Hampton. A firm's capital. He gave the definition as a firm's capital. A capital structure. Firm's capital structure is the relationship between the relation between the debt and equity, securities that make up the firm's financing of its assets. Firm's financing of its assets. Thus, the term capital structure means security mix. It refers to the proportion. It refers to the proportion of different securities raised by a firm for long term finance. These are the two definitions which you can write at the starting of your answer. Define capital structure and state its components. First we wrote two definitions. Now moving on to the components or the parts of the capital. Please write components and parts or the parts of capital structure First of all, you have to write there are four basic components four basic components four basic components of capital structure of capital structure. There are four basic components of capital structure. The first one is equity share capital. The first one is equity share capital. Equity share capital. In that you have to write first point in that it is the basic source of financing activities. Basic source of financing activities. Second, equity share capital. Equity share capital is provided by equity shareholders. Equity shareholders. Equity shareholders. Next point. Equity shareholders. Equity shareholders buy equity shares. Equity shareholders buy equity shares. Equity shareholders buy equity shares and help a business firm help a business firm to raise helps a business firm to raise necessary funds. They bear ultimate risk associated with ownership. They bear the ultimate risk associated with the ownership. Next point. Equity shares carry dividends at fluctuating rates. Next point. No, you can continue with it. Fluctuating rates depending upon the profits. Depending upon the profits. This was the first basic component, that is equity share capital. Now the next component is, please write the next component, that is the first is equity share capital. Second is preference share capital. Preference share capital. Preference share capital. First point. preference share capital or preference shares carry preference shares carry preferential rights preferential rights as to payment of dividends and have priority they have priority over equity shares priorities over equity shares for return of capital for return of capital when the company is when the company is when the company is liquidated when the company is liquidated. Second point, these shares carry these shares carry dividends at fixed rate dividends at fixed rate they enjoy limited voting rights limited voting rights they enjoy limited voting rights. So we started with the definition of capital structure and its components. The first component being equity share capital, second being preference share capital. Please write the third one. The third component, which is retained earnings. Retained earnings. In that first point, it is an internal source of financing. It is an internal source of financing. It is an internal source of financing. It is nothing but it is nothing but lugging back of profits. It is nothing but lugging back of profits. This is the third component. Let us move on to the fourth component, that is borrowed capital. Borrowed capital. First point, it comprises of the following. It comprises of the following. First is debentures. The another one is term loan. In debentures, we shall write a debenture is an acknowledgement. A debenture is an acknowledgement of a loan raised by a company. It is an acknowledgement of a loan raised by a company. The company has to pay. The company has to pay. The company has to pay interest at interest at an agreed rate. At an agreed rate. Moving to the term loans. Term loans are provided by the bank and other financial institutions other financial institutions they carry fixed rate of interest fixed rate of interest they carry fixed rate of interest. So the question was, answer in brief about defined capital structure and its components. First we wrote definitions, then components or the parts of capital structure, which included equity share capital, preference share capital, retained earnings, and last but not the least, borrowed capital. Let us move on to the next question. Please write question number 2. State any four factors affecting fixed capital requirements. Fixed capital requirements. State any four factors affecting fixed capital requirements. The answer is, first, nature of business. Nature of business. First, nature of business. The nature of business plays a role in determining fixed capital requirements. Determining fixed capital requirements. They need to have, or they need to invest. They need to invest a huge amount of money in fixed assets. Example for this, rail, road, and other public utility services. And other public utility services. And other public utility services having large fixed investments. Large fixed investments. Having large fixed investments. We are looking at factors affecting the fixed capital requirements. In that, first is nature of business. Second, or you can exaggerate this answer also, having some important points. Let us write some more points in this. The working capital requirements are the working capital requirements are nominal because they supply services and not the product. Next point. They deal in cash sales only. Next point. First is nature of business. Next is nature of business. Second, size of business. First is nature, second is size. In that first point, the size of business also affects the size of business also affects fixed capital requirements. And needs. A general rule. Second point. A general rule applies that the bigger the business, the need of fixed capital will be higher. The bigger the business, you can write the higher the bigger the business, the higher the need for fixed capital. Please write next point. The size of the firm. Either in terms of its assets, or sales, affects need of working capital. Affects need of working capital. Third point, scope of business. The scope of business. First point, some business firms that manufacture the entire range of their production would require a huge investment, a huge investment in fixed capital, in fixed capital. However, 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 those companies those companies that are labor intensive, that are labor intensive and who do not use the latest technology and who do not use the latest technology may require less fixed capital, less fixed capital, and vice versa. Some business firms that manufacture the entire range of their production would require a huge investment in fixed capital. However, those companies that are labor intensive and who do not use the latest technology may require less fixed capital and vice versa. Fourth point, extent of lease or rent. The extent of lease or rent. The extent of lease or rent. Companies who take their assets on a lease basis. First point. Companies who take their assets on lease basis or on rental basis will require less amount of fund for fixed assets, looking at the another side. On the other sides, the firms that purchase assets, firms purchasing the assets will naturally require more fixed capital in initial stages. It requires more fixed capital in initial stages. So looking at the factors affecting fixed capital, the first is nature of business. As being asked, write any 4 factors. In your examination it may be asked in brief, so go thoroughly. First is nature of business, second size of business, third scope of business, and extent of lease or rent. So this was your second question. Please write the third question. Question number 3, which is, what are corporate finance? What are corporate finance? And state two decisions and state two decisions which are basic of corporate finance, which are basic of corporate finance, which are basic of corporate finance. Or you can assume this question is as what are like write short notes on corporate finance also. Start the answer. Corporate finance deals with raising and using of finance, raising and using of finance by corporation, raising and using of finance by corporation. It includes various financial activities like capital structuring, like capital structuring, and making investment decisions, making the investment decisions. Also, you can add it financial planning, capital formation, and foreign capital, even financial organizations. Full stop. Right, next point. Even financial organizations, and banks, please include, and banks also play a vital role, in corporate financing, plays vital role in corporate financing. You can write one definition here. Please write. Corporate finance. The corporate finance deals primarily with the acquisition and use of capital by the business corporations, Now moving on to the two basic decisions. First, the basic, you can write two basic decisions. Two basic decisions are as follows. I am using these different colors for your better understanding. In board examinations, you should not use two pens together. At least You have to use a black pen or a blue pen depending on your choice. First one is financing decision. Do not use two different pens in board exam. First is financing decision. The first is financing decision and the next is investment decision. First we'll see financing decision. Every business firm must carefully must carefully estimate its capital needs. Every business firm must estimate its capital needs. That is working capital and fixed capital. Working capital and fixed capital. The firm needs to mobilize funds. Next, the firm needs to mobilize the funds from the right source, from the right source, also maintaining the right combination of debt, capital and equity capital. Debt capital and equity capital. For this balance, a company may go for, or it may raise equity capital or even opt for borrowed funds by way of debentures, public deposits, term loans, etc. to raise funds. The first decision being financing decision. Second is investment decision. Please write second, investment decision. Investment decision. Once capital needs are accessed, once capital needs are The finance manager needs to take correct decisions sorry, regarding the use of the funds, regarding the use of the funds, regarding the use of the funds in systematic manner, in systematic manner, productively using effective control it measures effective control measures to generate high profits, to generate the high profits. Full stop. Finding investments, finding the investments through proper decisions, and using them successfully, in business, is called as capital budgeting. First of all, once the capital needs are assessed by the manager, he needs to take correct decisions regarding the use of the funds in systematic manner, productively using effective control measures to generate high profits, finding investments through proper decisions and using them successfully in business, and this process is known as capital budgeting. The question still goes, what are the corporate finance and state 2 decisions which are basic of corporate finance? First is financing decision and second is investment decision. I hope you understand this. Please practice it by writing again and again so that you can perform well in your board exams. Thank you.